Okay. All right, and let's begin with the bracha for learning Torah together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kishanu tanu v'asoknu divrei Torah. Okay, well, I hope you're not upset with me, but I decided in preparing for today that we would not be looking at the Torah portion, Mitzorah, which is the second half of the Torah portion that you probably studied with Rabbi Vogel last week, Tazria. Did you study Tazria last week?
Yes.
Who remembers?
Who remembers? That's a good.
I mean, when you give me that name, I don't know what.
Well, actually, it wasn't, but yes.
Yeah, so many, many years, Tazria, Mitzorah, those two Torah portions go together, hand in hand. They're joint Torah portions. This year and years when there's a leap year, they're separated. Mitzorah is the continuation of Tazria, which deals with skin rashes and impurities and those kinds of things. But I figure that because Shabbat is Shabbat Hagadol, which literally means the big Shabbat or the Shabbat before Pesach, that we would talk about Pesach instead in preparation for our Seder. So I hope that everybody's okay with that.
Right.
And if you're not, then you'll just disappear from the Zoom and I won't know the reason why. And I'll just assume you're a very busy person. So I'm going to.
I just have a question.
Please.
Is there a fast before Passover or the first night?
Well, yes, actually, yes. Thank you for saying that. So it's not a full communal fast. There is a tradition that the morning of the holiday through the afternoon until the holiday begins, people who are firstborn, originally, Eileen, it was firstborn men, but people who are firstborn fast that day unless they attend what's called a siyum. And a siyum is a study session that completes a section of Jewish literature. And anytime there's a siyum, you don't have to fast. The reason for that fast is to remember historically when the Israelites when Pharaoh commanded the Egyptians to kill the firstborn males. And so as a way of taking in that history and reflecting back on the tradition when we were saved and the firstborn males were saved by the midwives, by Shifra and Puah, firstborn sons typically would fast the morning of Pesach or the day before the Seder.
Yeah, my grandson did it one year and I wasn't sure why, but he was very excited to tell me he did it once.
Well, most synagogues offer a siyum, a study session after the morning minyan, and many firstborns come to that service so that they can be part of the siyum and therefore don't have to fast, eat breakfast, and then go about their day regularly.
But does it have to be? It has to be the first. The son has to be the firstborn, or just the firstborn son?
No, it has to be the firstborn who happens to be a son.
Well, he was the second, but he did it anyway.
That's okay. You know what?
I'm sure he was. He was very young. Yeah.
It's very nice. Okay, so before I want to share my screen with all of you, I want to take a moment and just have us reflect on what are the opportunities and challenges to hold a Seder this year when the world and the Jewish world in particular is so distraught, is still reeling from October 7th, is still in the midst of a war, just survived a 300+ bombing by the Iranians, and we have no idea. So, I think it's important for us to somehow frame our Seder in relationship to the things that are going on in the world today. And I think it's impossible to actually have a Seder without taking into consideration what is going on in Israel and what has happened in Israel since October 7th. And I don't know if any of you are leading a Seder or have thought about this at all, but if you have, I would love to just begin in that place, and then I'm going to share my screen with you and tell you what I'm thinking about, just as an initial way of framing some of what I wanted to do with you today. Steve.
I was just raising my hand saying that I am leading a Seder, but I'm certainly going to comment on, recent events, and I think I'm going to ask the participants to talk about, have they experienced anti-Semitism in their lives? I've experienced maybe 3 or 4 incidents as a child and as a young adult in the Army. I experienced mild anti-Semitism. Nothing as extreme as what too many of our countrymen, fellow Jews have experienced. So I'm certainly going to go around the table and ask for expressions of that, and what thoughts on how do we address it? What should we be doing in our communities to tell our truths, to promote acceptance and friendship and mutual respect?
Right. Yeah, Judy.
I think it highlights how fragile freedom is, and that we have to appreciate when we have it, and figure out what it means and what to do about it when we don't.
Great. Thank you. Stan.
It's not only the war going on and what's happening, but the hostage situation and the people that are in captivity that are in, even worse than bondage, for that matter. And to, discuss that. And of course, many people are having empty chairs, the yellow ribbons, and one thing or another that symbolize this, but it's a real challenge. So I was going to mention one other thing, maybe to ask you. One of the things that Rabbi Soloveitchik did in his discussion of Passover and the weekly Torah portion is a translation of the word Passover. And he is convinced that it means more that watch over or hovering than passing over. And that's the way that the derivation of Pesach comes about, and that it gives a different emphasis to the holiday.
Great. Thank you, Stan. Other thoughts before we jump into the text about how you imagine, framing this year's Seder in light of both the anti-Semitism in America, the war in Israel, the hostages. Those are the things that have thus far been said. Lauren, there's a lot of background noise in your.
Oh, you could hear this background noise. I have my headphones in, so I'm not
You
sure
can
what
still
you're hearing.
hear everything around you.
Oh, that's interesting, because there's really no noise here, so I wonder where it's coming from.
Okay.
You still hear it?
No, not anymore.
Okay. My thing is as Jews, you can't keep quiet when you see an injustice. I know Judy knows this story, but I had invited my daughter-in-law's cousins for Passover. They're not Jewish, and they told me going to their youngest child's choir program on the second night of Passover, and I asked if it was.
Can't hear.
We lost her.
Yeah.
She froze.
Never mind. Go on. I'll tell it when I come back.
Okay, well, now you're back.
You're
And
So
I'm back.
now
Yeah.
they were going to choir practice on the second.
It was a program on the second night of Passover at a Thousand Oaks school, public school, and it did not sit well with me that they would do it on the second night of Passover. And I ended up calling Rabbi Averbach, who's the temple, who's the rabbi of that community, and they would say, yeah, that was the only day they got the venue. And my children said, well, why did you get involved? You don't even have a child at this school. And I said, because Jews cannot be quiet when there's something going on. And they basically told the parents, well, yeah, your kid could perform or they don't have to perform. And I said, that's no answer. I mean, they've got to know that was the second night of Passover, and you don't give Jewish parents the choice. Yeah, your kid could be in the performance or they don't have to be in the performance. And it just bothered me a lot. And I told my children, I said, Jews in Europe kept quiet once upon a time. You just can't keep quiet when things are going on. So,
Right.
and I'm going to bring that up at my Seder again. No, don't tell me to keep quiet because it doesn't concern me. It concerns every Jew.
Would you call the Dodgers?
What I call the Dodgers.
Yeah, because they have games on Passover a lot.
I know, but this is a public school that's doing it.
I want to get back to how we're framing our Seder. All right, so
that
those
sounds
are
great in my stages.
all great, thoughtful possibilities. Let me share my screen with you. Judy, go ahead while I'm sharing my screen.
Well, this is kind of off track a little bit, but the way I was framing our Seder, because I'm trying to get the kids really involved in it this year, is Paul told me his niece wrote a Taylor Swift Haggadah. So I got it, and it's very traditional. There's some stuff about Taylor Swift in it, but I was going to try to engage them that way.
Smart.
And what?
That's smart.
Well, I really got reamed by this woman at my hand therapy who told me that it's awful and that Taylor Swift is just trying to make money off it and blah, blah, blah. So you think it's okay?
My feeling is that there are 4 children that we speak about at the Seder. Lauren, for some reason, there's still some crackling. Oh, there you go. You're muted. Okay, thank you. There's 4 children that we speak about: the wise, the wicked, the simple, and the one who does not know how to ask. And the idea of those 4 children is to remind us that the way we tell the story and share at the table has to be appropriate for a variety of different learners. And if there are grandchildren at a Seder where telling the story through Taylor Swift is going to engage them and make it relevant to them, then go for it. That's the way I feel.
That's how I feel, but she was real strong.
Well, you know what? Now you got 2 different opinions.
Yeah,
So,
good.
okay.
That's mine.
So the way, okay. So many years ago, Noam Tzion, and some of you may have it, it's called, I think, A Night to Remember or A Different Night, created a Haggadah that has been used by many people over the years. This year, he and his son created a supplement in response to October 7th. And one of the ways in which they open, Mishael Zion, opens with this framing. And I think it's an important framing for us to think about. So he says, the Passover story begins in a broken world amidst slavery and oppression. The sound of the breaking of the matzah sends us into that fractured existence, only to become whole again when we find the broken half, the HAMAKOM, at the end of the Seder. So let's just stop there for a second. Do you remember the first steps of the Seder? The first step is what? Kadesh, saying the blessing over the day, sanctifying the day. Then what comes after Kadesh? Kadesh, Orchatz, Karpas, Yachatz. You know, the song of the steps. So we have Kiddush, then we have washing, then we have dipping the parsley or the potato or whatever vegetable you're eating into the salt water. And then the next step is called Yachatz. And Yachatz is when we hold up the matzah, we break it. One half of it we put aside for the afikomen, and the other half we put back into the Seder plate. The question that Mishael Zion is inviting us to think about is, why do we start our Seder breaking something? Why do we begin the story of the Exodus, which is the story of the freedom and the redemption from Egypt, in a place of brokenness? Right? That's what it says. The Passover story begins in a broken world amidst slavery and oppression. Why do you think that is? What is the mood that is being created in the moment we break that matzah? Why would we do that? Isn't this supposed to be a night of joy and celebration? So why would we start in this dark place? Stan.
Well, I think the celebration starts with the fact that we are not in that place anymore. But if we were always in a particular place, that we wouldn't be celebrating the same thing. And by the way, that I attended the Shalom Hartman summer session 7 years ago, and both rabbis were some of my teachers there at that, and I got to know them to some large.
That's beautiful. That's very nice that you had that opportunity. Okay, good. Why else? Yeah, Rob.
I would argue that we are still in a broken world. We still have slavery and we still have oppression. It's worldwide, and we have to remember that.
Yeah, that I think is really, really key to the Seder. The key to the Seder is to say that while we tell the story of the Israelites who were caught in oppression and servitude and slavery and were redeemed, the world is still in a state of not fulfilled redemption. The world is still in a place of brokenness. It is still in a place of slavery. And it is our responsibility as Jews to move us from that place of brokenness to freedom. Today, if we were to think about the places of brokenness, both for Jews, the Jewish community, and the world, what would those places be? Steve already hinted at one, and that is the increase in anti-Semitism in America today. Or maybe it's not so much, Steve, an increase in anti-Semitism, but it is a more public and robust anti-Semitism, which always was there, but it was below the surface.
Mm-hmm.
So that is for sure one place of brokenness. And your conversation around the table of what can we do about it, I think is an important one. Where else? You know, as Rob said, do we find those places of brokenness today? Stan.
We're also in fractured political times, that we've gone from politics just being one of the things to the only thing, and fractured many families, for instance.
For sure. Now, I don't believe that our Seder table is a place for us to engage in political discussions. Should we vote for Trump? Should we vote for Biden? Should Netanyahu be the prime minister? Should Benny Gantz be the prime minister? How do we deal with the issues of abortion in America today? I mean, I don't know if we want to use the Seder as a place of engaging in politics, but we do want to engage in a place that says, how do we build a more cohesive society? How do we move beyond a place of fracture, as you said? And what a beautiful image. We break the matzah into two: Democrat, Republican, left, right, liberal, conservative, America's blue versus America's red. There are so many ways in which we can frame that breaking of the matzah as a means to engage in conversation, but Stan's right. It's not about just knowing that we're politically no longer aligned. It's what do we do about it? In the same way that Steve said, what do we do about the anti-Semitism? Judy, I think I saw your hand, and then Steve.
I don't think it's just anti-Semitism in the world. I think there's such an increase in hate and
In general.
right, in general, and dictators are becoming, replacing democracies, and I think that somehow people, I don't know what's causing all of this hate, but that's the cause of all the problems that are going on, I think. And to heal, we've got to
So
find a
I
way.
want to come back to Judy's comment, because I think it's going to be a really important one when I walk you through the prayer Vihisha Amda, which we'll get to in a little bit. So we're going to come back to this. Steve.
I think most of you know I'm an IT guy, a technology guy, and one of the I think about my lifetime. When I was a little boy, there was one computer in the world, and now we all have supercomputers in our pockets, and everyone is connected. And I think to follow up on Judy's comments about hate, I think what we're seeing is that there's a paradigm shift. We're seeing the prevalence of worldwide communication that did not exist when certainly back in the 1950s when I was growing up. And now, I mean, I can communicate with people all over the world in an instant. My wife, who has family in Paris and in Israel, talks to them daily. This is a major change, and I think the fact that this is uncontrolled really is what is driving the ability for haters, for anti-Semites to spread their lies, their exaggerations. And one of the challenges that mankind has is how do we get control? How do we incorporate laws, protections, support when this is this paradigm shift of I'm just in my neighborhood, all I do is talk to my family, which is what I recall. I recall we had one phone in the living room.
Yeah.
And it was a party line. And the woman, I remember picking it up as a 6-year-old or 7-year-old, and the woman next door was on the phone talking, I don't know. So I mean, we have to stand back and appreciate this is a huge change in our ability to communicate. And because of that, this to me is the root cause of this rise in anti-Semitism. Haters, bigots, people, terrible people like the Ayatollah of Iran, who wants to wipe us off the face of the earth. He's got a much bigger pulpit than he ever had.
It's true.
We need to think through, in my mind, how do we counter that? How do we make friends? How do we achieve peace? And I'll stop my rant.
No, it's really important. How do we move from a world of social media to post-social media where it's so easy to express hatred in the anonymity of your own home on a computer? Whereas if you sit in front of another human being, break bread together, the likelihood of continuing that hate is much less. Absolutely right. Absolutely. George.
Yeah, well, few comments. First of all, we didn't need a computer for Jew hatred. I mean, we've got 2,000 years of history to prove that. You know, World War II, the Inquisition, you know, you name it. So that wasn't a requirement. You know, everything wasn't wonderful before. And secondly, something has changed in this country, which a lot of people, you know, use the broad term anti-Semitism, you know, like a generic. Well, maybe 100 years ago, it may have come from, you know, Mississippi type, you know, Klan or whatever. Now it's Muslim fundamentalists and leftists, like at Columbia University, where I graduated. You know, in other words, I would be much safer to be a student at University of Mississippi right now than Columbia or Berkeley or any other, you know, Harvard or
Definitely not
Yale or
Berkeley.
so on. So it's
No,
a change of where the Jew hatred is emanating from in this country.
Exactly. So, you know, I don't remember who said it, but, you know, somebody said that the thing about anti-Semitism is it morphs into
Yeah, other things.
whatever, you
Yeah,
know, today's big issues are. There's always a way to tie it into it's the
Yeah.
Jews' fault. And there's no question, both on the right and on the left, Jews are facing terrible, terrible.
but
and-
very little from the right today, maybe in the past, but not today.
Well, the far right, let me rephrase that, the far right.
Who are they? There's three of them or something here.
There's more than three.
Okay, well, it's not like a riot like it where they tie up the Golden Gate Bridge or you know, a riot at Columbia or Berkeley or whatever.
Mhm. Yeah,
There's obviously some of everything, you know, you name it, there's some of it.
well, so I want to go, okay, so Judy made a comment. She unfortunately just had to leave. George just made this comment. I want to go back to my text for a second, and I want to jump down a little bit too. Do you know this prayer in the Haggadah? V'hi she'amda, v'hi she'amda, lavotenu v'lanu. Does that ring familiar?
Yeah.
Maybe you don't sing it the way that I sing it in the Haggadah. Maybe you do sing it that way. What does it mean? And this promise is what has stood by our ancestors and us. For it was not only one man who rose up to destroy us. In every single generation, people rise up to destroy us. But the Holy One, blessed be He, saves us from their hands. So I guess the question that I want to ask is, why is this in the Haggadah? Why is it necessary for us to say here that it's not just Pharaoh that wanted to rise up and destroy us, but in every generation? Because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about, Steve started us off with anti-Semitism. Then somebody else talked about hatred. And then George just jumped in and talked about, you know, how that anti-Semitism is manifested today on the far left. Why at our Seder do we recite this phrase? We actually sing it. Why? Why is it there?
Yeah.
Why do you think it is? Stan.
Part part of the Seder is that each generation experiences actually being there, whatever that means. So we have to think about prior generations and future generations when we're talking about the things that are happening.
So you see this as a fulfillment of the line later on in the Haggadah when it says, B'chol dor vador hayav adam lirot et atzmo ki ilu hu yatsa mimitzrayim. In every generation, it is an obligation for each person sitting at the Seder to see him or herself as if he or she was personally redeemed from Egypt.
It's in
You're
line
saying,
with it. I'm not saying it's the same thing.
okay, but from a psychological standpoint,
Yeah.
from an emotional standpoint, what is this doing? Like, what does this passage do for us? How does it frame for us, our discussion around the Seder table? Lauren? And then Steve?
Don't forget the past. Don't forget, because there's always somebody there who's going to be in your future who's going to do the same thing as what they did in the past. And when you get too comfortable, there's going to be somebody there who's going to try to destroy you. I think that's what's happening. I think, Mark and I were just at the hummus bar and grill, and our waitress just got here from Israel. She's here a month, and she said, Israel had their eyes closed for 3 years. They got too comfortable, and
okay, good.
it's
So,
like,
so Lauren, I
Gotcha.
want to hold on to the comment that Lauren said. What Lauren is saying is that the things that we are living in today are not unique to the Jewish experience.
Mhm.
It is easy for us living in America to forget the fact that there were the Egyptians, there were the Greeks, there were the Romans, there were the Christians, there were the Turks, there were the Ottomans, there were the Babylonians, there were the Persians. In every single generation, there were those people who wished to destroy us. We are not living in a unique period of time in Jewish history.
Yeah.
We are not. We are facing the same thing that our ancestors faced. But as negative as that feels, shouldn't there also be something positive? Look at the last part. But the Holy One saves us from their hands.
Yeah.
In every moment of sadness, of loss, of darkness, of despair, it moved to moments of hope and possibility.
Yeah. Okay.
Eileen, you're shaking your head.
Because in every generation, whether it's past or in the future, to wipe out because we're easy scapegoats for the people that need a scapegoat. And where it says that God is going to save us, I haven't seen it yet. Where it's other than the story, I have not seen where God has saved us.
So I would argue, Eileen, that in the year 2024, there are worldwide somewhere around 15 million Jews, more or less.
Mhm.
There have been genocidal attempts throughout history to wipe us out. To me, the fact that there are 15 million Jews alive in 2024 is all the evidence I need that God has saved us.
I think we have saved ourselves.
Okay.
I think it's by our upbringing, our teachings, or how
Okay.
we believe.
Okay, you are raising the next point
I
that
got it.
incredibly important point that I want to make in a second. So I want to go to the point that Eileen just said.
Rabbi, I've
But
got one.
hold on, before we go to that point, I want to get the other comments of hands that are raised. So
Okay.
George, we'll start with you and then we'll go to Steve.
Yeah, okay, well, and I'll concur with this theory that, why is everybody picking on the Jews? And an answer that makes some kind of sense is the mission is to bring morality and one God into the world. And that's resented,
Okay, so in other words, so
they're resenting the message.
George raises an incredibly important
Yeah.
discussion question for the Seder.
Yeah.
If we raise in the V'hi Sha'am prayer, if we say that in every generation there are those who wish to destroy us,
Mhm.
George is inviting us to ask the question, which I think is an incredibly important question, George, that you just raised. Why?
Yeah.
Why in every generation do they pick on the Jews?
Yeah.
What is it about who we are? And what is it about what we bring into the world conversation that wants people to destroy us?
Yeah.
And in ancient times, it was monotheism, right? We were the people that brought monotheism into a polytheistic world.
Yeah.
And people resented that, and they resented us. So to Eileen's comment before and George's question, today, why, right? In Nazi Germany, we can say why they hated the Jews. In every generation, Christian anti-Semitism was clear because we killed Jesus. And the reminder of a Jew being alive is a reminder of Jesus' death. Why is it? What is it that the Jews bring into the world? What is it that we have brought into the 20th and 21st century that would lead people to have so much hatred against us? Yeah, Linda.
I think part of it is jealousy because Jews tend to work hard and value education, and they may have. Of course, it's untrue that all Jews are rich, but there are many Jews who are comfortable and middle class, who are educated, who rise up, and who would rise up to take more positions if there wasn't prejudice against them. So I think a good part of it is jealousy.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think that is a big piece of it. Other reasons why they hate us, Steve.
I think we're just a small target. If we were in a billion like the Muslims, I think there are a billion Muslims and 2 billion Christians. It's a large group, but we're small, and when you're small, you get picked on. It may just be as simple as that.
Okay, Stan and then Rob.
I think the state of Israel in today's world is, I'd say there's jealousy, but it's mainly the success that this small country in the Arab world has created, and a lot of, at least in today's quote, anti-Semitism starts with anti-Israel.
But no, absolutely. It's another great reason why they hate us. Rob.
In terms of Christianity, I remember reading that one of the apostles said that the problem with Judaism is that it's too hard. It's too difficult to do mitzvot, and it would be so much easier if all you had to do was accept a Messiah into your heart and you would be saved. And that's a completely different point of view that Judaism has. Our charge to heal the world is too difficult, and people don't want to face that. It's too much of a challenge. And so people want to, of course, always shoot the messenger. And so they hate us partly for that reason.
Right. I love it. Another excellent reason why they hate us. So with all of those, let's go back to something that Eileen said earlier, right? Despite the fact that there is in every generation groups of people, governments, movements that wish to kill the Jews, we are still here. Whether it's being done by God or in Eileen's, view, done by us, that we've survived. So now my next question is why? Why have we survived? And in our survival, is there a purpose? Do we have a role to play in the world today? Do we have a message that we have to give to the world? In a sense, this is almost going back to Steve, your very opening question. When you go around your Seder table and you ask people, what do we do about anti-Semitism? Is there a way to flip that question in the positive as opposed to the negative and say, what are the messages? how do we live our life that reinforces who we are in this world and how we contribute? What are the gifts? The gifts that Jews in the 21st century bring to the world that the world absolutely needs from us to make the world a better place, right? And I don't think the answer is tikkun olam, because every religious tradition invites us to tikkun olam, to repairing the world. What is specific about being a Jew and who we are that the world needs to hear?
Okay.
George.
Okay, well, first of all, I will argue here about tikkun olam, because in the Aleinu it says tikkun olam b'malchut shaddai. Okay, in the, not just in the secular sense, but carrying on our tradition to make it happen. But
well, wait a minute. No, that's not exactly what that means. What it means is that we will repair the world under vision of one God.
We're not there yet. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So we got to go that way. But
so is that the answer?
No, I got another thing to say here.
Well, wait. Before you go to the other thing, is that the message that we Jews must bring into the world?
That's
the only way
part.
The only way the world will achieve redemption is when we live in a world where this understanding of the singularity of God is held by everybody.
Well, no, going back to what I said previously, I think it was Rabbi Shochet who quoted Heschel or something. I probably got it screwed up. But the Jews today are like the messenger who forgot the message. Most of us don't know what we're here for. And again, that mission, to bring one God and, goodness and all that stuff into the world, to tell people all about it. And of course, we're rejected because of it. Everybody doesn't like what we're saying.
George, you just raised a huge and incredibly important point. Right. If in every generation people rise up to kill us, and in every generation we survive, and there's a reason why we survive, because we have a message to the world. What happens when we don't know that message anymore? What happens to the Jewish people when our purpose in being doesn't exist?
Well, a lot of us do, but many don't. The kind of, unfortunately, we have great freedom in America, and also it means freedom to forget who you are, and which is an unfortunate thing that has happened.
So let me ask this robust group of people who come week after week after week to lunch and learn.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think we can provide to that generation that George is speaking about that has lost the understanding of their message? How do we do that? How do we reclaim that generation that has been lost to us, to let them know that as Jews, whether they actively identify or not, the world hates us because we have a message. And if we're here, we might as well impart that message because they're going to hate us no matter what.
Yeah, you're right.
How do we bring them back? How do we teach that message? And by the way, this is a question that can be discussed at your Seder table, right? You take this prayer, V'hi Sha'amda, and you frame it as, why in every generation do they hate us? Why are we still here? What is our message? How do we engage the generation that's lost that message to own that message again, right? Those are very powerful conversations to have around the Seder table. Stan.
I think that we've created a culture of what do we deserve as opposed to what our responsibilities are. So when I was, going back and talking about computers and whatever. I started in the early 1930s, but the whole general evolution of the culture has gone in the direction from responsibility to privilege.
Yeah.
And I think that's
Mhm.
where we have to change the culture. We have to go back to the culture that says that we're responsible for everything, not just
Wow. That's huge. So I think that's a fantastic message. One of the eternal messages that is expressed in Jewish tradition is that the world doesn't revolve around me, that individual rights is secondary to communal obligations. And perhaps, as Stan says, that is one of additional reasons why people hate us. Because to share a message that says that we are responsible for everybody else, Kol Yisrael Aravim Zeh B'Zeh, as opposed to just responsible for ourselves, is counterintuitive to the world today. That, I think, Stan, you just hit it. That, I think, is one of the absolute most important messages that we as Jews need to profess all the time in today's world. Think about our politicians. Politics should be about serving the community, not about serving the self. How many of our politicians choose to be elected because they want to further their own personal agenda and not do what's best for the country?
Yeah, Rabbi?
Yeah.
Comment. Not about politics, but you said, we shouldn't, I'm responsible for myself, you mentioned you should be, a communal responsibility. However, we're even worse than that because right now, many in this country think other people are responsible to provide for me.
Oh,
It's not
that's
even
even,
me. It's not even me going out and making you are responsible to provide for me. You have to work and and take care of me.
that is so
Yeah,
good. Exactly.
yeah.
So that's another message.
That's even
It's-
worse than
it's not only that we have an obligation
yeah,
to others, but we have an obligation to ourselves. We
Yeah.
can't rely on others. We have to pick ourselves up. So that's two profound messages that
Yeah.
the Jewish world, that the Jewish people
Yeah.
need to teach to the world. Okay, Nancy, yes.
Okay, we're always, well, we've always been known as the chosen people, but I mean, we do so much good and mitzvah day and different community service things. I mean, there were a few Jews over at Pierce, but the community service day doing things, and when we do sandwiches with the for the homeless, and we do things with the mosque and stuff. I mean, it's like our mitzvah. That's our thing, and you can't destroy us because we're gonna be there and we're gonna do our thing.
Beautiful. I love that. That's another excellent answer, is that we are so committed. It's like Hillel. Imena nili mili. If I'm only for myself, who am I? But right? That's the point. I can't just take care of myself. I must take care of the world that feels like it is being broken. Okay, this
But that's not
whole-
what, but that's, I was gonna say, but that's not why people hate us. I mean, why do people- they don't hate us because we take care of the world. So what's the reason why they hate us?
Well, I think the answers that were given earlier. I think all of those answers that were given were answers as to why they hate us. They hate us because of the messages that we bring into the world, messages that many people in the world don't want to hear. Personal responsibility,
We
caring
need a
for
better
others.
PR. We need a better PR.
We
We need a better
do.
PR team.
We do need a better PR team. I
No,
want to go back.
was-
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, so I think Mark and I might have been on our honeymoon and we met these couples and
She's gone.
everybody was, they were made to them. We didn't know how to respond to them, but they all were saying wherever they lived in the country, they all worked for Jewish people, and they actually all admired the Jewish people that they worked for because they were so generous and they were so smart, and they here they were making anti-Semitic jokes, but they all admired the Jewish people they worked for. So it was like interesting.
Well, I think that goes back to Linda's
I don't know.
comment earlier, right? Linda's comment earlier, which is why do they hate us? Because there's a certain amount of envy or understanding that we work so hard and are so committed, and others may not have that same drive. We've spent a lot of time, most of our time, looking at the brokenness, the despair, the oppression. And it's not fair to only focus on that at our Seder, because the Seder also moves from despair to hope. How does the Seder end? What is the last words of the Seder?
Next year in Jerusalem.
Jerusalem.
Next year in
About
Jerusalem.
yeah.
Exactly. And next year in Jerusalem is a statement of hope. It is a statement that says we believe there's going to be a Jerusalem next year. We believe there's going to be Jews to celebrate in Jerusalem next year. Whether that Jerusalem is physical or metaphorical. So much of the Seder is not just about brokenness, but it's also about hope. And so I want to, share this last piece. Judaism is a religion of details, but we miss the point if we do not sometimes step back and see the larger picture. To be a Jew is to be an agent of hope in a world serially threatened by despair. Every ritual, every mitzvah, every syllable of the Jewish story, every element of Jewish law is a protest against escapism, resignation, or the blind acceptance of fate. Judaism is a sustained struggle, the greatest ever known, against the world that is, in the name of the world that could be, should be, but is not yet. There is no more challenging vocation. Throughout history, when human beings have sought hope, they have found it in the Jewish story. Judaism is the religion. Israel, the home of hope. Maybe that's why they hate us so. Because people, right? Nihilism. There is no good in the world. The world is a dark place. And Jews come along and say, no, just the opposite. There is light in the world. The world is not a dark place. There is so much potential. And that means that that's also our message. As messengers, we must be messengers of hope. Stan.
Well, there's no better messenger than Rabbi Sachs. The epitome of that.
That is true. Well, I don't know about that, Stan. I think the best messenger of hope today is you and Eileen and Steve
not me.
and Nancy and George and Leora and Rob and Linda and
Right.
Lauren, right? Because there is no Jonathan Sachs anymore. There is only us. And we are the ones that have to be responsible for that message of hope in the lives of our community, of our family, and of the world. Right? That is the message of, and just one more piece and then we'll stop. The way he frames the bread itself, the matzah, it's just so profoundly important. What transforms the bread of oppression into the bread of freedom is the willingness to share it with others. Sharing food is the first act through which slaves become free human beings. One who fears tomorrow does not offer her bread to others, but one who is willing to divide her food with a stranger has already shown herself to be capable of fellowship and faith, the two things from which hope is born. Right? How do we start our Seder? Halach ma'anya. Let all who are hungry come in and eat. We shouldn't say that just in a ritual kind of fashion. We should live it. We should live it. We should open up our homes, open up our hearts, open up our pantries, open up our purses to those in need. And in doing so, right, we create a world that looks very different than the one that we are living in right now.
Can you send that document that you used or put it on the website do we have access to it?
This one here,
Yeah,
I'll give it to, I mean, if you want, I'll just send you I'll share the email with you.
right, thanks.
Share, Word, Stan. Yeah. Okay, Stan, I'm gonna send it to you now. And anybody else who wants it, just send me an email and let me know. Okay. Any last thoughts before we conclude? Otherwise, yeah, Linda.
I don't think everybody hates us. I know
No.
why does everyone hate us? I'd say most people are neutral and some people like Jews, you know? So let's not be too worried. There are still people who don't hate us.
Thank you. Thank you. That is a really, really important point and a great way to end our class today. So thank you. All right, everybody. Have a Zissen Pesach, a sweet Pesach, a healthy, a happy, a joyous one, rich discussions at your Seder. And hopefully I will see you all soon.